The candlelit glow of the Gryffindor common room flickered against the dark, rain-soaked windows. The entire castle felt subdued after a particularly draining session of OWL revision. Hermione Granger, however, always found a way to push a study session just a little longer. A thick tome on magical hieroglyphs and logograms sat propped against her knee, while Harry Potter fiddled absently with his wand, eyes half closed. "I just can't believe we have 2 more days until the Ancient Runes exam," she sighed, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. "I need at least 1 more pass through the entire textbook." Harry glanced over from his armchair, a small smile playing on his lips. "Hermione, you've practically memorized every one of Bathilda Bagshot's essays, plus that special supplement by what's-her-name, Professor Tarma? You'll be fine." Hermione looked up, a retort at the tip of her tongue. Instead, she noticed something in Harry's gaze that made the words catch in her throat. He seemed proud. Not just the casual pride a friend shows another friend, but the kind that glowed with genuine admiration. She felt a sudden, inexplicable warmth inside her chest. Across from them, Ron snored loudly, mouth half open. He dozed off just after writing out a short summary of Chapter 16. Harry and Hermione exchanged a fond look before a giggle passed between them. Quietly, Hermione got up to throw a blanket over Ron. When she turned around, she caught Harry watching her again. His bright green eyes were thoughtful, but behind the thoughtful calm flickered something else. For the first time in their years at Hogwarts, Hermione felt a twist of nerves in her stomach under his gaze. She asked in a hushed voice, "Something on your mind, Harry?" For a fraction of a second, he looked ready to say something important, maybe even life-altering. Then a faint flush colored his cheeks, and he shrugged. "Nah, just tired. Let's pack up, yeah." But as they closed their books and climbed the dormitory stairs that night, both sensed a shift. Neither knew precisely what it meant, but it felt like walking through a door that had been there all along. Only now it was finally open. The next few weeks passed in a blur of exam stress, Quidditch practice, and hushed conversations about Voldemort. The weight of the war effort pressed down on everyone. Yet inside Hogwarts walls, life carried on with a semblance of normalcy. Classes met, friends bickered in the Great Hall, Filch griped about muddy footprints in the corridors. But beneath the routine, something new brewed between Hermione and Harry. Small things. The way Harry sought Hermione out whenever an odd puzzle about defense against the dark arts reared its head. The quiet hush in Hermione's voice whenever she noticed Harry's scar hurting. On many occasions, Harry tried to reassure her. "I'm fine, Hermione," he'd say, pressing a hand to his forehead and forcing a grin. "Really, it's just a dull ache this time." She'd nod, biting her lower lip. "You'd tell me if it was worse, right?" "Always," he promised, and he meant it. Ron noticed, of course. He might have been thick about certain emotional matters, but the subtle tension in the trio was hard to miss. At first, he chalked it up to exam nerves, then to Quidditch nerves, then maybe to the pain in Harry's scar. But over dinner in the Great Hall one night, when Hermione rose to clear her plate and brushed a gentle hand over Harry's shoulder, Ron's eyes narrowed. Hermione herself seemed to freeze at the contact, and Harry went a bit pink, but neither moved away. Ron's ears burned at the tips. He mumbled an excuse about heading to the common room and left them at the table with a tight, troubled expression. Later that evening, Ron cornered Harry on the stairwell leading to the boys' dorm. "Mate, you and Hermione," he began, trying to sound casual, but his voice wavered. "Is there something you need to tell me?" Harry, who'd been thinking about the same question for weeks, couldn't muster a coherent answer. "I honestly, Ron, I'm not sure. We've just been talking a lot." "Talking a lot?" Ron repeated, mouth tight. "And holding hands? Or hugging?" Harry blinked, confused. "No, not really. Nothing like that." He was telling the truth. Up to that point, it had just been glances, small touches, a closeness that felt new. But he felt suddenly defensive. Perhaps on some level, he already wanted that kind of closeness more than a friend. "Ron, we've always been close," he continued. "It's not something new exactly, just, Just a little different, I suppose. Ron looked at him for a long moment. Then, shaking his head, he muttered something about the same old nonsense, turned, and trudged up the steps. Harry stared after him, feeling simultaneously relieved and weighed down by guilt. That night, as he lay in bed, listening to the soft breath of sleeping classmates, Harry realized something important. If there was something real brewing between him and Hermione, he had to be honest, especially with himself. One of the central truths about Hermione Granger was her love for the library. Even after the stressful wave of OWLs had passed, she continued haunting its shelves, ever hungry for knowledge. As the school year rushed on, she spent more and more evenings scanning texts on defensive spells, healing potions, and advanced magical theory. In her mind, she wanted to be prepared for any crisis that might unfold, given the threat of Voldemort's rise to power. On a moonlit night in early December, Harry found her at her usual spot, a small table hidden deep in the restricted section, courtesy of special permission from Professor McGonagall. The lamps cast a warm, golden glow across her open books, and she was so lost in her reading that she didn't see him approach. "Hermione," he said softly. She jumped slightly, hand going to her chest. "Harry, you scared me." A soft laugh escaped her, and she quickly glanced around to confirm Madame Pants wasn't watching. "What are you doing wandering around the library this late?" He shrugged and took a seat beside her. "Couldn't sleep." This wasn't the first time. Since his talk with Ron, he'd found himself even more restless. "Thought I'd see what you were up to." They both knew that was only half the reason. A current ran between them, intangible but very much real. Harry watched as she tucked a curl of hair behind her ear and refocused on the thick textbook. "Let me guess," he teased. "Something about advanced healing? New hexes to watch out for?" She gave him a sheepish smile. "Actually, advanced healing potions. There's a whole section about potions to help with severe migraines, cursed wounds, you name it. I thought, well, in case your scar hurts again." The earnestness in her tone made his heart twist. "My scar," he repeated, a bit surprised. "I appreciate the concern, but there must be other people who need these potions more than me." She put down her quill, focusing on him fully. "Maybe, but your safety, it matters to me." The soft hush of the library made every word feel amplified. Harry felt himself leaning closer. "Hermione, you matter to me." Then, in a rush of honesty he could no longer hold back, he pressed on. "You know, you've always stood by me, from the moment we became friends. And lately, I can't stop thinking, maybe I don't know. Is there something more?" Hermione's breath caught. She had spent countless hours wrestling with this same question. Nights reading by wandlight, mind wandering to the boy with green eyes who'd become her best friend in the world. And, possibly, something beyond that. "Harry," she said, voice unsteady. "There's something, yes, something more. I feel it too." For a moment, the two said nothing. Then he reached out, sliding his hand over hers. She squeezed gently, a flicker of fear and excitement dancing in her eyes. The library felt like it was holding its breath. He was the first to break the silence. "I'm not good at all this, with feelings, but I'm sure about one thing. I do care for you, Hermione, more than as just a friend." She gazed at him, eyes shining, and whispered, "Me too, Harry." That single moment, two hands clasped beneath the glow of a dusty library lamp, became their unspoken promise. From that night forward, their bond was no longer just best friendship. It was a tentative step toward love. The weeks that followed were a swirl of clandestine looks, fleeting touches, and near heart-stopping moments of closeness. Both Harry and Hermione were cautious. They knew that stepping into a relationship would bring questions. From their friends, from professors, from the entire Gryffindor Tower. They didn't want to hurt Ron, nor turn the trio dynamic into some awkward standoff. But neither could deny what they felt, so eventually they decided that honesty was best. One chilly Saturday morning, when they were all free from classes, Hermione invited Ron to a quiet corner near the Transfiguration courtyard. Harry arrived soon after. Ron eyed them, immediately sensing something was up. "All right," he said, crossing his arms. "What's this about?" Hermione swallowed hard, glancing at Harry for support. He nodded encouragingly, so she took the plunge. "Ron, Harry, and I, well, we've decided to start seeing each other differently." Raising an eyebrow, Ron repeated, "Differently?" Harry cleared his throat. "We mean dating, Ron. We're dating." He forced himself to meet Ron's gaze. "We're sorry if this is strange or if it makes you uncomfortable. This is something that feels right." Ron's face went through a myriad of emotions. Shock, confusion, a flicker of something like betrayal. But to their relief, he finally let out a slow breath and nodded. Well, it's not like I didn't suspect," he mumbled. "You two have been off in your own world lately. I guess I always thought it would be Hermione and me who ended up together." His ears turned pink. "But if it's you two, then I'll deal." A moment of awkward quiet stretched out. Hermione, eyes bright with gratitude, stepped forward and hugged Ron. "Thank you," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. Harry patted Ron's shoulder, clearly thankful too. "Just try not to snog each other's faces off in front of me, all right?" Ron added, trying for humor. They laughed, tension easing. Though it would take time for him to be completely comfortable, it was a start. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing from there. The threat of Voldemort cast a dark cloud over Hogwarts, intensifying as the semester wore on. Mysterious disappearances and suspicious magical traces around Hogsmeade alarmed the Order of the Phoenix. Rumors flew everywhere that Death Eaters had infiltrated the Ministry, that a new attack on Hogwarts loomed. Amidst the turmoil, Harry and Hermione grew closer. Ironically, the constant danger seemed to deepen their commitment to one another. Hermione helped Harry polish his Patronus charm practice. He, in turn, supported her through her anxious nights of endless research about Horcruxes and ways to protect her parents. There were stolen moments in the Gryffindor common room, shared cups of tea in the Great Hall, and midnight strolls through the castle corridors. An odd mixture of romance and fear. Their first proper kiss happened on a stormy night after a DA meeting. Everyone else had left the room of requirement, leaving Harry and Hermione behind to tidy up. Thunder rumbled outside. Harry looked up from picking scattered parchment off the floor to see Hermione standing by a window, face lit by flickering lightning. She wore a solemn expression, probably thinking about the next threat or the next big puzzle to solve. But in that electric silence, he realized how much he relied on her warmth, her brilliance, and her resilience. He walked over, placed a gentle hand on her cheek, and kissed her. It was tentative at first, lips barely brushing. Then she leaned in, pressing back, releasing an almost inaudible sigh of relief, as if they had both been waiting for this moment for years. When they drew apart, hearts pounding in unison, a fierce sense of hope welded them together. The war was looming, but they had found a reason to keep fighting. While Harry and Hermione embraced their budding romance, Ron wrestled with a messy tangle of emotions. There were days he was genuinely happy for them. Other days, insecurities gnawed at him. He felt overshadowed, like he was always the odd one out in the trio that had once been the bedrock of their friendship. He withdrew a bit, spending more time with Seamus, Dean, and even Lavender Brown. It was an attempt to figure himself out, find validation away from the new couple. He disliked the jealousy simmering under his skin, but he couldn't banish it entirely. Hermione, who always had a knack for reading people, didn't let the distance fester. One morning, she sought Ron out in the Quidditch stands. He was polishing his broomstick, looking moody as gray clouds drifted across the sky. She took a seat beside him, drawing her cloak around her legs. "Ron, I've been worried about you. Are things okay?" His jaw tightened. "Yeah, fine. Congratulations on your new relationship," he said with a hint of sarcasm. Immediately, he winced, as though regretting his tone. Hermione exhaled. "Ron, I'm sorry if this has hurt you. I care about you so much. You're one of my best friends. I need you to know that." For a moment, he stared down at his broom, running his thumb along a crack in the handle. Eventually, he met her eyes, "Look," he began quietly. "I realize you and Harry, you two fit, all right? I'm not going to pretend I'm fine with everything, but I'm trying." She reached out and gave his arm a squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means so much. This group, the three of us, has always been stronger together, right?" Ron let out a small huff of laughter. "Yeah, that's what Dumbledore says. We are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided." With those words, a flicker of their old friendship reignited between them. It would never be exactly the same, but it could be healed. Months passed, and winter melted into a bright but tense spring. Professor Dumbledore shared cryptic instructions with Harry about Horcruxes, forging a secret mission that Harry knew Hermione would be integral in completing. She picked up on every subtle hint, studying like her life depended on it. In many ways, it did. If they were to defeat Voldemort once and for all, knowledge would be their greatest weapon. Between the near-constant threat of attacks and the looming responsibilities, Harry and Hermione's fledgling relationship faced little chance for normalcy. And yet, in the chaos, they found moments of sincere tenderness. Whether it was a shared piece of chocolate in the courtyard or a quick squeeze of the hand before a Quidditch match, each small act felt like a declaration. "We're in this together, no matter what." The castle itself seemed to notice. The sentient magic of Hogwarts, subtle but real, grew protective in ways intangible to outsiders. Doors that had been sealed for centuries sprang open at Hermione's approach. Passageways that had hidden for ages revealed themselves when Harry needed to escape detection. If Hogwarts had a heart, it beat in unspoken support of the young couple forging a new path amid darkening times. Eventually, the day of reckoning came. Whispers rippled through the school that Voldemort's forces had been spotted near the Forbidden Forest. The professors scrambled to fortify the castle, calling students and staff alike to stand ready. Fear pulsed in the air, but there was also defiance. Hermione and Harry stood side by side at the edge of the Great Hall, scanning the anxious crowd. Neville, Ginny, Luna, Dean, and Seamus all gripped their wands, determined. Ron approached, slipping in on Harry's other side. There was no time for bickering or awkwardness anymore. Only unity. Lightning forked outside the stained glass windows. McGonagall's voice boomed, rallying the defenders. "Remember, we protect each other. Fight together." The battle that ensued would later be remembered as the Second Battle of Hogwarts. Hooded Death Eaters battered at the enchantments. Giants roared, shaking the very foundations of the castle. Dementors swooped overhead, forcing everyone to cast bright patron uses into the air. Hermione's Patronus, a sleek otter, zipped past Harry's stag, shining brilliantly in the gloom. In the thick of it, Harry and Hermione fought back to back. When a masked Death Eater cornered them in a collapsing corridor, Hermione disarmed him with a fierce cry of "Expelliarmus," while Harry stunned two more behind her. They locked eyes for a split second, hearts hammering. A deeper certainty flooded them. "We can do this. Together." Further along, Ron battled fiercely alongside Neville, protecting a group of younger students from a swarm of Dementors. There was no room left for old grudges, only the powerful camaraderie of friends united in a single cause. In the final moments, Harry faced Voldemort in the Great Hall, just as in the original timeline. Spellfire lit every corner of the room, shattering windows and splintering stone columns. Hermione stood off to the side, heartsick with terror but unwavering. She refused to leave Harry alone in that duel, no matter how dangerous it was. Voldemort's red eyes flicked over Hermione with scorn. "You think love will save him, little mudblood?" he sneered. "There is nothing more pathetic than..." But Harry, fueled by righteous anger and unwavering devotion, shouted, "Leave her alone!" His voice echoed, resonating with a magic older than hatred. For all Voldemort's formidable power, he had never comprehended the strength that came from true love and unity. As their final spells collided, green meeting Harry's blazing disarming charm, Hermione's voice added power to Harry's magic. Her love, her unwavering trust, bolstered him in ways Voldemort could never fathom. In a burst of brilliant golden light, Voldemort's wand spun out of his hand. The Elder Wand refused him, just as in the original story. The Dark Wizard's final Horcrux had already been destroyed, leaving him mortal and vulnerable. In one last wave of energy, Voldemort fell. Silence blanketed the Great Hall, broken only by the crackling of ruined stonework. People stared, not quite daring to believe it was over, until cheers rang out from all corners of the castle. Joyous, exhausted, delirious relief. Harry, panting and trembling, turned to find Hermione. She ran to him, and he caught her in a fierce embrace. Everyone around them erupted into applause and tears, though some might have rolled their eyes at the display. But in that moment of triumph, all that mattered was that they had won. Together, the days following Voldemort's defeat blurred into an emotional whirlwind. Funerals were held for the brave souls lost in the battle. The wizarding world began a slow, uneven path toward rebuilding and healing. Hogwarts itself needed extensive repairs. Yet, even in the midst of this reconstruction, hope burgeoned like new spring buds after a harsh winter. Harry and Hermione stayed at Hogwarts until the end of the term, assisting in the cleanup and comforting students who were still reeling from the terror. With the threat gone, they could finally breathe. They walked hand in hand through the corridors, no longer afraid of being attacked at any moment. For the first time, they had the luxury of thinking about the future, one without constant death threats and looming dark magic. Ron, to everyone's relief, was integral in the repairs and quickly regained his cheerful spirit. Late one evening, he found Hermione and Harry sitting in the common room, the fireplace crackling. Joining them, he offered a small smile. "S'pose I should get used to seeing you two together, huh?" Harry smirked. "We're not that bad, are we?" Hermione snorted, an affectionate glimmer in her eyes. Yes, we can dial it back if it's bugging you." Ron shook his head. "Nah, you've earned it. Besides, I think Luna fancies me." He turned pink, prompting laughter from both Harry and Hermione. In the slow, healing weeks that followed, the wizarding world recognized Harry as a hero once again. But this time, Hermione was equally celebrated. Reporters scrambled to record details of how she'd helped decode Horcrux secrets, how she'd saved countless students in the final stand, how her unwavering support of Harry had given him the will to fight on. The press was always looking for a new angle, but in truth, it was a shared triumph, and neither Harry nor Hermione wanted the spotlight. They just wanted to be together, free and unburdened. When summer arrived, they returned to the Burrow for a few weeks, finding solace in the chaotic warmth of the Weasley family. Even Molly Weasley, who was always certain that Hermione and Ron might one day wed, quickly gave her blessing. She fussed over Harry, now an official part of the family's extended circle, and told Hermione in no uncertain terms, "Look after him, dear." On a sun-dappled afternoon, Hermione led Harry out into the orchard behind the Burrow, away from the bustle of the house. They sat on a fallen log among wildflowers. Birds sang overhead, and the summer breeze lifted strands of Hermione's hair, shimmering in the sunlight. "I've been thinking," Hermione began, picking a small daisy from the grass. "This is the first time we've had normalcy. What do we do now?" Harry laughed lightly. "Normal. Merlin's beard. It sounds like a foreign concept, doesn't it?" She nodded, weaving the daisy between her fingers. "We could go back to Hogwarts in the autumn, finish our newts, or travel, maybe. Do some good in the world. Fix all the damage the war caused." A hopeful note colored her voice. "I'd like that," Harry said quietly. Then he caught her free hand. "But more than anything, Hermione, as long as I'm with you, I'll be happy. We've fought so hard just to get here." He paused. "I want to do whatever we do together." She leaned in and kissed him. The sunlight, the rustling leaves, and the weight of his hand in hers created a tapestry of tranquil joy. They had no illusions that the world was free of problems. There would be new villains, new heartbreaks, new challenges. But in that orchard, they allowed themselves to dream of a shared future built on love, courage, and the unbreakable bond that had carried them through the darkest times.